Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from round 6 of the Uzbekistan Chess Cup 2024, Yangyi versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And seems like it's between Arjun Erigaisi and Nodirbek Abdusattorov. It's a race to 2800, a race between the two of them who will reclaim that number 4 spot, maybe even number 3, number 2, number 1 at some point. Will they overtake Fabiano, Hikaru, and Magnus? And yeah, I mean, they're just playing incredible chess. And yeah, we already mentioned in the previous video that Arjun, it's not going to be easy for him to get 9 out of 9 and get that 2800 in the tournament that he's playing. But it could be even harder for Nodirbek, as this is, it's hard to say what constitutes a super tournament, but here out of the 10 players in this event, 8 are over 2700, so okay, he does have a bit of a stronger opposition here, but I mean, every game is just extremely difficult to play. So let's check it out. Here with the black pieces, Nodirbek faces a 3-time Chinese champion, Yangyi. We've featured him on the channel many times. He's an incredible player. Let's see what happened in this one. So Yangyi with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, knight f3, we have knight to c6, and bishop to c4. Yangyi goes for the Joko piano, knight to f6, the two knights defense, and pawn to d3, the so-called modern bishop's opening. No one wants to go for knight to g5. I'm very sad, I know you guys are too, but players are just afraid, I guess. Much like you know, with the Evans Gambit, they just don't want to play it. They play with white, they play, you know, a standard Italian game, and they lose with white. You might as well have played the Evans Gambit. But okay, bishop to e7, we have castles by both of them, and rook to e1, pawn to d6, and pawn to a4. So nothing new here, thousands and thousands of games in the database with this exact same setup. Bishop to e6, we have captures, and pawn to c3. Pawn to a5, stopping b4, as one always should. And now, there are a couple of games, even a top-level game. For example, Fabiano Caruana played a knight to a3 here against Daniil Dubov in last year's World Blitz Championship, and Dubov won that game. But here we have bishop to e3, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. And the situation on the clock, you can see that Yangyi very well prepared. Nodirbek taking some time, but nothing serious, 5 minutes. Most likely to decide on what kind of a game he wants to play. So okay, queen to d7 and knight b to d2. You can see that Yangyi is still blitzing out moves, even though it's a classical game. Pawn to h6, and now knight to c4. The knight is excellently placed here. a4 has been played, so you don't have to worry about the knight being kicked away with b5, and you have the e4 pawn. You don't have to worry about the d5 pawn being played. Yes, d5 is sufficiently covered, but the e5 pawn would hang if you attacked with d5. So that will have to wait. Nodirbek goes rook to f7. We have queen to b3, attacking b7, and pawn to b6. He doesn't want to, of course, play rook to b8. The rook is coming to f8 to attack the white king. So okay, queen to b5, preparing to trade queens if the knight moves, and also put extra pressure on that e5 pawn. Pawn to g5 by Nodirbek, going after the white king. Pawn to h3, stopping g4. Rook 8 to f8, doubling up on the f-file, rook 8 to d1, and now pawn to g4. Nodirbek is the high-rated player here. He has to risk if he wants to win, and he goes for g4. And going into this round, they are both on 3 points, so on equal grounds. We have h captures, knight captures, and now as the knight no longer controls the e4 pawn, pawn to d4. Yangyi grabs the full center, rook to g7, and here he sort of gives a little bit of a dare, but if you calculate properly, you know that it's not really a dare. Just to give you an example, let's say you play d5, looks like a very nice move, all of a sudden rook captures on f3. And even after d captures on c6, attacking the black queen wants to come to e8 regardless of what white plays, and now black is just winning. You can capture the rook, you don't capture the rook, especially if you capture the rook, then it's just a matter of a nice discovery. The knight covers the f1 square, and king h1 or h2 doesn't really matter. Queen to h5 will be checkmate. So that's the idea. So okay, king f1. Yangyi says, all right, I might as well. I mean, you do have two rooks on the f and g file. The knight is here. The queen is ready to join the attack. I might as well play king e2, king d2, king c2, and king b1. The king will be much safer on the queen side. So okay, queen to e8 by Nodirbek, still shifting the queen to h5. D captures on e5. Nodirbek not interested in recapturing right away. Queen to g6. And now it's, well, you can't really capture. If you further capture with e captures on d6, then knight captures on f2 happens, and all hell just breaks loose here. If you play bishop captures, then queen captures on g2. If you don't play that, what do you play? It's I mean, you can start running away with the king now, but you shouldn't allow knight captures on f2. So he starts running right away, king to e2, and this is the top move recommended by the engine. So Yangyi playing some sorry about that. Haven't realized the camera. What? Sorry. There we go. Sometimes it does that. Sorry about that. Yeah, but yeah, after king to e2, now Nodirbek recaptures. Knight c captures on e5, knight f captures on e5, and now d captures on e5. And now pawn to f3. It looks a little bit scary as you allow queen captures on g2 if the knight moves. The problem is the knight cannot move with tempo. As if knight captures on e3, knight will capture and the g2 pawn will be defended. And if you play something like knight f6, then g4, and already it's white who's better because the king will hide on the queen side, and it's Nodirbek's king who will be in trouble. So after this f3, Nodirbek has to capture on e3, knight captures, and now bishop to c5. Puts pressure on the knight. Of course, the idea is captures and captures here. And now, while you could play g4, it's not as nice. Queen will come to f6, pawn will come to h5. You will break through. So here, king to d2 was played. Of course, the idea is you will hide the king on the queen side and everything will be fine. But there's one problem with king to d2. There's only one problem. But even one problem is enough for a 2766 Nodirbek, and I imagine for you guys, as you are incredibly strong watching all of these videos, the entire day, feel free to pause the video and try to find the winning idea for Nodirbek while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this wild maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to g5. Looks like a move that doesn't do all that much except pin the knight, but that's all you need to do. Because remember, if Yangyi hides his king on the queen side, then he will be better. Queen to g5 stops the king from reaching the queen side. The king is for the moment stuck defending that knight. So what does Yangyi do? He plays queen e2. Now the king hopes to run away, but rook to d8 with check. We have king to c2, rook captures on d1. And now the problem is, if you capture with the king, then Nodirbek just trades down into a completely winning endgame. Bishop captures, queen captures, rook captures, and rook captures on g2. Yes, you're up only one pawn, but there's the passed h pawn. The king is completely cut off out of the game. The b2 pawn hanging, this is completely winning. So after rook captures on d1, knight captures on d1, the only way to stay in the game, but you will have to suffer through a lesser endgame. Queen captures, obviously not that. Queen captures on g2, we have queen captures on g2, and the rook captures on g2 with check. King to d3, and now Nodirbek starts bringing his king into the game. King to g7, we have rook to h1, and king to g6. And now, the reason why b4 is played on the next move, but the reason the pawn is sacrificed is because there's no move that Yangyi can make. For example, if you try activating the knight, Nodirbek immediately captures it. It just goes rook captures on b2. He's up 2 pawns. He's completely winning. So that's why Yangyi sacrifices a pawn to activate his knight. As long as there's a knight, there's a way, or so they say. Captures, 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 and knight to e3. We have rook to d2 check, king to c4, rook to d4 check, king to b5. Now Yangyi's king is close to those queenside pawns. If he can eliminate them, then he also gets a passed a pawn. We have bishop to d2 attacking the knight, and rook to g1 with check, king to f7, and knight to g4. Now going after the h6 pawn. So bishop to f4, it's still defended by the bishop, but also the e5 pawn was hanging. So bishop to f4 controls both of the weaknesses. Rook to h1, hoping to win the pawn, but just king to g6. To win the pawn with the knight, but just king to g6. Rook to g1, threatening some nasty discoveries, and now Nodirbek boldly goes pawn to h5. He says, have your discoveries, I'm not afraid of the tricky bastard knight. So knight captures on e5 with check. It's a double check, but Nodirbek is very happy with this. King f6, knight to c6, attacking the rook, rook to d3. Goes after the f3 pawn. Rook to h1 in hopes of trading pawns. Rook captures on f3, rook captures on h5, and now rook e3, going after the e4 pawn. pawn to e5. This comes with a check, and now king to g6. This is the only move that wins the game for Nodirbek. The problem is if you trade, then you get rook to h6 check, and the e-pawn will fall. It doesn't really matter what you do. For example, even if you go up the board, it doesn't matter. This knight check will win the pawn, so that's enough. And even if you go to f5, doesn't really matter. Still, knight to e7 check is very annoying. And if king to g5, there's even rook captures on e6, so the pawn is lost either way. So king to g6, the only way to save the pawn. Rook to h1, and now bishop captures on e5. We have pawn to a5, nothing left to be done here, you have to trade. B captures, knight captures, and now bishop to d6. And now Nodirbek is up 2 pawns, it's only a matter of whether or not he can advance them. Yangyi's king is very active. King to c6, we have king to f5, and now king to d7. Sorry about that. We have rook to d3, threatening some nasty discoveries, knight to c6. For the moment, there aren't any, as all of Yangyi's pieces are on light squares, and you can only get the dark square discoveries with the dark square bishop. So bishop to g3, king to c8, and now pawn to e5. Now it's time to advance the passed e-pawn. Rook to h5 with check, king f6, and now knight to b4. Attacks the rook, we have rook to b3, attacking the knight, knight to d5 with check, nicely connecting with the c7 pawn, but king to g6. Again, with a tempo on the rook here, rook to h8, and now pawn to e4, with the bishop nicely guarding the pawn. And even if you capture it, just rook c3 ends the game. There's not much to be done here. So here, king to d7 was played, king to f5. We have rook to e8, putting the rook behind the passed pawn, but now just bishop to d6. We have king to c6 and rook to d3, attacking the knight, and now after rook to h8, pawn to e3. We have rook back to e8, guarding the pawn from reaching the e2 square, and now bishop to e5. Disconnecting the rook and the pawn. Knight to e7 check, we have king to e4, and he was in this position on move 62 that Yangyi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The bishop cannot be moved, the rook is controlling the rook's control of the e file has been eliminated, and there's not much to try here. If you play something like knight to g6, you go after the bishop here, rook to d6 check picks up the knight. So that's out of the question, and not a lot of moves you can try. e2, e1 just wins the game. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, very nicely done, and these are the standings. It's again a battle of two Nodirbeks like we had last year in Qatar Masters. Nodirbek Abdusattorov and Nodirbek Yakuboev, both on 4 points out of 6 games. Javokir Stindarov, 3.5 points out of 6 games. Then Yangyi, Richard Rapport, and Alexei Saran on 3 points. On 2.5 points, Shahriar Mamedjarov, Parham Makhzulu, and Vidit Gujarati. I mean, imagine such players, Shahriar Mamedjarov, Parham Makhzulu, and Vidit Gujarati on 2.5 points. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's not officially a super tournament, but I consider this a super tournament. And Alexander Grishuk, imagine Alexander Grishuk in last place with 2 points. So incredible stuff here, incredible performance by Nodirbek. He is currently, let me just check real quick, I haven't checked the standings today. On the live ratings list, let me see if I have it here. Yeah, Arjun is still ahead of him. Sorry, lost it somewhere. Yeah, okay, so Arjun on 27.77, and Nodirbek Abdusattorov on 27.70. So Arjun still ahead 7 points, but you know, both tournaments are still being played. It's gonna be very wild. But okay, Nodirbek's tournament almost coming to an end. Arjun's tournament just began, so we'll see what happens. But I imagine they will play many more tournaments. They are both, of course, in the race for the FIDE circuit. They want to qualify for the next candidates tournament, so it's gonna be pretty crazy. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Beautiful victory by Nodirbek Abdusattorov with the black pieces against a very strong, like I said, 3 times Chinese champion, 27-15 Yangyi. I would like to thank William Cooper, Shangu, Derek King, E.K. McAllister, and Eric Keith McAllister for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.